This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by Squarespace, the easiest way to make a beautiful and functional and mobile-friendly website, portfolio, blog, or online store. If you go to squarespace.com and use the promo code THUMBS, you can get 10% off your order. Squarespace.
It's January 13th, 2015.
This is Idle Thumbs.
Yes. Yes.
245. Is that correct?
Let's just say it is.
I think it is.
Guess what it is, you guys?
What is it, Jake?
It is January. Wait, is it?
It is January. You're right so far.
It's January 13th, 2016.
This is Idle Thumbs 245. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Nick Brecken.
I'm Jake Rodkin. And this is a podcast about video games and video games only, where...
And letters.
And letters.
Nick got one.
Video games and the Post.
Royal Mail from the UK, presumably, that I'm going to open now.
Is there a return address?
No, well,
the Queen.
So let's see what it is. Dear Mr. Nick Brecken, you don't know me, and doubtless you will never personally meet me. I merely wanted to thank you. You know what? This is just a very nice letter. This is just a genuinely nice letter.
What you least expected.
This
literally.
is not. I mean, we talked about this before the podcast. I've never received a nice letter.
I said maybe it's just going to be someone saying, Nick Brecken, I'd like you, and I think you do good work.
Yeah.
And that was the last thing
you
were prepared to believe would show up in the mail addressed to you.
No, this is just
from a mall
really nice.
in the United Kingdom.
From James Terry. Oh, well, thank you, James. So, yeah, no, I won't read all of this because it's actually just very nice, which is, that's not fun at all. But
you mean you won't read it on the podcast?
Right, yes.
You'll read it to yourself over and over and over every night, yes.
Yeah. But I do want to address something else that I received in the mail. Mm-hmm. It was a box that was delivered to my doorstep at my house.
You're like your personal address.
My personal address.
Yeah. Was it ticking?
It was addressed to me, and I opened it thinking I must have ordered something from Amazon that I forgot that I had ordered. And I opened it up, and there was a teddy bear inside and a letter, and it said, "Happy birthday to my best friend, Nick Breedon." But it was not... It was not...
It your birthday?
Yeah, it was my birthday, but it was not signed. Now, I pulled this teddy bear out, and there's like a plastic tab on the back of the bear. And I kind of just stared at this tab and sort of pawed at it a little bit. And I just tugged on it a little bit. And what is this tab? This is like this long plastic tab.
Right.
And then I set it down. And I looked on the front of the box, and there was a company that had sent this teddy bear.
Right.
And so I looked up the company, and I forget the name of the company. I should have grabbed it for the podcast. But it's some company that sends teddy bears to people. And if you pull that tab, it starts like a sound effect that never stops. It starts making an obnoxious noise that just will never stop until you physically destroy the bear. You have to destroy the bear.
Wait, so did you pull the tab all the way out?
No, I still haven't done it yet.
Oh, and you didn't bring the teddy bear.
That's what I realized right before the podcast, that I didn't bring the bear. How stupid am I that I didn't bring the dumb bear to find out what the sound effect is? I'll bring it next week. But
we can end an episode with that bear. You cannot start an episode with that bear.
No, but I'm also just, separately kind of confused as to how somebody even got my address. It's a little creepy, but also this bear is now a thing. So anyway, weird mail week.
Good job looking that up before you fucking pulled the tab.
Yeah,
that is amazing. Amazing resilience. Like no human has ever done that before you.
Yeah, their entire company is predicated on the fact, presumably.
Oh yeah, it's like prank bear.
Yeah,
like that's
probably because
ruin your friends' lives with this teddy bear. That's the whole site.
Yeah, you were like, if I pull this tab, an anthrax puff is gonna hit my face.
That's exactly what I thought of. I was like, this is anthrax.
This company did not see Nick Brecken coming.
Right? Yeah,
the most cautious and paranoid man to whom their product could be sent.
I did sort of.
You pull the tab, and then just a flash bulb goes off, and then you hear a modem sound.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I was a little worried. It was sort of like the end of Seven. I was just picking the box open with like a pair of pliers. What that bear
does when you pull the tab is it disappears, and as it's doing so, it's going back in time to the person who sent it to give them your mailing address.
Yeah.
That is ultimately pointless because all it does is then just enables them to send you the bear.
Yes.
Right.
Congratulations on that bear.
Yeah. Good job psyching out that bear. Or whatever.
Yeah, I did it. So, Chris, you played a video game this week. Well, also you embarked on a journey this week, a video game journey. Yeah.
Last Thursday, I got Just Cause 3 on Steam.
Oh, a bear appeared just now and told me everything you're about to say.
So I downloaded Just Cause 3 on Steam because there are a bunch of games coming out, I think, soon that I'm looking forward to. I think most soon is The Witness, which I'm really excited about. So that I'm excited. There are a couple other things coming out in the next month that I can't even think of off the top of my head.
Nothing really.
And so, so because I knew I know that that's the case, I was sort of itching to just play something, so I just went on Steam and saw what...
Chris, I have a quick aside. When you're itching to play something, you're not supposed to go to Steam.
What does that mean?
You're supposed to go to Itch.io, Chris.
Oh my God, you're right. Itch.io.
You scratched your itch.
But in this case, I scratched my Itch.io on Steam and found the game that apparently is what I desired most, which was Just Cause 3. I don't think I played Just Cause 2.
Oh, really?
Much, if at all. I remember playing Just Cause 1 a lot, and I can't remember why.
Just Cause 2 was great.
But man, it just feels like the totally correct way for a kitchen sink open world game to go, as opposed to the way that Assassin's Creed games, at least were going when I finally kind of got bored of them, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I'll talk about that soon. But the thing that led me to do, I got that game on Thursday, and then on Saturday, I placed an order for all new PC components, new motherboard, CPU, video card, and RAM.
Yeah. You scratched that itch.
I scratched multiple itches over the last week, and then on Tuesday, yesterday, all the parts arrived, thanks to Amazon Prime, and then Tuesday night when I got home from work, I was so excited about this. By the way.
Of course.
It has been so many years since a game sort of inspired me to upgrade my PC. And it was because the thing about this game is that I can play it on my old computer, but it's so clear.
Please.
Yeah, it really is. It was a please situation. And also, honestly, the frame rate was just bad. It wasn't just that I could play it fine, but I had to turn the settings down.
But think about what a shitty anti-aliasing setting you were on. Think about how low that anisotropic filtering was. Please.
Those things were turned off entirely. And so last night I started putting my computer together. And it's been a long time since I've done this, especially all the way down to the put in a brand new motherboard and put on thermal paste and put the CPU and the heatsink in there.
Classic step.
Yeah. Oh my God. I started doing this at probably 8 p.m. after getting home from work and after eating dinner. And
the last time I built a PC, says Chris Ramos Brand, it probably took a couple hours.
Yeah, that's what Brian said. So I got every part of it done, like every single thing hooked up, all the little front panel cables going into the motherboard and the fans and all the little stupid bullshit
LEDs
cards and just all the dumb things that I have in there, the big ass video card with all the power cables and everything. And oh man, by the way, lead up to this was as I broke the seal on the first part that I opened, my mind flashed back to 2 weeks before this, when I was going through just a box of old electronics and computer stuff to just get rid of crap that had accrued in my apartment. And my modular power supply unit it's a power supply that comes with a bunch of different cables that you can plug into the power supply itself, depending on what actual power cables
so you don't have to have all those cables.
And I just flashed back to this moment of me being I'm not going to upgrade my computer anytime soon. I don't need these. but next time I do this, I'll just buy a new power supply. And I threw away all the extra like power supply cables. So that was a good thing to realize, like, as I was opening up this, like, CPU seal.
Oh, so you didn't get a new power supply?
I did not get a new power supply.
I was going to ask how many velvet bags were included in your power supply.
No velvet bags. As it turns out, it was literally the exact same power connections required for my old everything as my new everything. So that was a lucky break. So anyway, I spend hours, probably 3 hours, hooking everything up, every little tiny connector and every little thing. And it just doesn't turn on. Like, it's just red light on the motherboard.
Yes.
That's it.
Is there a code number of any kind?
Nope, this motherboard doesn't have that.
No pattern of beeps?
No, I still don't know if I
Did you flash your EEPROM?
I still don't think I ever got the PC speaker actually hooked up, because I've never heard it make a single beep. But I don't think I would have gotten a beep.
Think of all the sad, like, noises you're missing out on.
I know. Oh my God, it was so sad. And so I looked up a million, like, PC won't start things on the internet, and I eventually just ended up taking apart the entire thing, every single component, unscrewing every single little motherboard mounting hole from the case, taking off the heatsink and all the little brackets and everything. Oh my God.
Oh man, were you really sad when you had to like unsquoof your thermal paste?
Yep. So it was like
cleaning that off.
Yeah. So okay. So at this point it's like 11:30 p.m. and Sarah's like, "Are you going to
are you really doing this
anytime soon?" And I was like, I think I broke it. I don't know. I have to take it apart and see. So then like 5 minutes later, I'm like going to the bedroom. Like, do you have any nail polish remover? Because I have to get all this like thermal paste crap off of the CPU and heatsink so I can reseat it. She does not. So then at midnight, I'm walking from my house to the 24-hour Safeway to buy rubbing alcohol and cotton swabs. On the way back from Safeway with my little bag full of like rubbing alcohol and cotton swabs, and then also just toilet paper because we needed it. I walked there, and then on the way back, I caught a bus. And as I was getting off the bus, someone called my name, and I looked around, and I guess it must have been a podcast listener who's just like, "Oh, I'm a fan," and I'm like, "Oh, hi," and I really awkwardly just left because I was like already walking out the door of the bus. So sorry to whoever that was that I maybe acted like a weirdo. Good job intercepting me in the middle of an idle thumbs ready encounter.
You didn't have to explain yourself to that person. "Oh, Chris, I love your podcast. Seems like you know a lot about the world of gaming." "Yeah, I'm buying some rubbing alcohol and cotton swabs to remove the thermal paste after I fucked up my build."
Yeah. So
imagine if you'd yelled all that really quickly as the doors of the bus were closing. "Sorry, thermal paste.
Twin Frozers." I must have wiped off and reapplied the thermal paste, which if you haven't built a PC before, this is the stuff that like sits between your CPU, like the actual computer processor, and the heatsink, like the big metal assembly and fan that keeps your CPU cool.
It looks like
it's like goop.
The like heat sinks have spent the last like 15 years looking like if you saw like a behind the scenes featurette on how they filmed the miniature cities in Blade Runner. That's like what heat sinks look like to me.
True. Yeah, it's just a big crazy shape of like fins and slats and like metal copper tubes and fans, and it just this huge fucking thing sits on top of this tiny little CPU and keeps it from getting too hot. And the thermal paste is a gooey substance that you put a little bit of on the CPU, and then when you smash the heatsink on top of it, it spreads out in an even layer and keeps there from being any little gaps of air that will reduce the heat transference from your CPU to your cooler. So anyway, I must have cleaned off and reapplied that thermal paste 10 fucking times because I would squeeze a bit on and then I would get the like cheese to the pizza effect where I remove I bring the tube of thermal compound away from the thing and it just stretches out like a foot as I take it away and then gets everywhere onto like the side of the CPU. And I'm like, oh, God damn it. I went through like 40 cotton swabs and, like just half of the thing of thermal paste, doing this again and again. And then I realized that there were like 3 smashed pins on my motherboard on the CPU little
just the
socket.
Seat. Yeah.
And which I assume is why it wasn't starting up in the first place, because I could not find any other thing that I did wrong.
It's usually the motherboard.
Yeah. So I took a thing that was recommended on the internet, apparently. I took a credit card and I just really carefully
put it between?
Bent the pins. They were the ones on the very edge, so I couldn't put it in between. There's something to put it in between. But I sort of just
fucking hoped.
Bent them back up into shape as best I could. They're clearly not perfect. I'm not going to get it to
But if
like,
the CPU seat's on it now, you're
like
okay,
a
right?
sterile like Intel robot that like,
Well, that robot apparently fucked up your motherboard the first time, so...
That's true. Fuck that guy. So I got that back as best as I could based just with my shitty human eyes. Did everything all over again just to the sort of CPU, motherboard, and power supply, and nothing else hooked up. Not even a hard drive. And I was no longer getting the red CPU light. So at that point, I hooked everything else back up. It was like 2 a.m. by this point. This was like 7 hours ago as of right now. And I eventually put everything back on the computer, hooked up everything up all over again, and I think my computer works now. And I didn't have time to play Just Cause 3 last night.
But think about how fucking sick your frame rate's going to be. Think about it.
I just want to go home and start playing that game because it's really good. So I'll just start talking about Just Cause 3 now, I guess. It's so good. That we've talked, I think, on this podcast before. Maybe not know why. I don't know. We talked about sort of open world fatigue on this podcast. Just that sort of like Assassin's Creed model, that sort of Ubisoft open world model that seems to be so. I don't know if it's still as prevalent in the last year, but definitely for years there.
Yeah,
was just the accepted way of making a modern open world game where you have these just interchangeable missions and these sort of just dumb tasks you have to do that really have nothing to them. They're just like, go to this place, and then you've done the thing, and like assassinate this guy, and every single guy is assassinated the same way, and it's just sort of Just Cause structurally is not that different in that it's, there's this massive archipelago, this big island system, and you have to, take out this dictator who's oppressing the whole thing. This one is set in like a fictional Mediterranean island country, I guess. And, there's like I thought it was Italian at first, but then because everyone sounds Italian, and then I realized, it's like generically Mediterranean, right. Spanish, Italian, kind of whatever. And you have to liberate all these provinces, and each province consists of individual settlements that you liberate, and as you liberate those, you're working towards sort of liberating the whole map. And then and then on top of that, there are sort of story missions the game feeds you, but you can do the story missions whenever you want. You can just sort of, before you do the next one, you can spend any amount of time you want just like going around the islands and sort of liberating provinces, or doing the sort of just little map missions that unlock sort of races and, the kind of stuff you get in a game like this. But the thing that makes it awesome, and it's true of Just Cause in general, is that the systems that populate this game are just outrageous and incredible. I mean, they've really doubled down on the mobility stuff. You now have a flight suit or a wingsuit permanently. You can just always go into glider mode. You have
the Far Cry glider just attached to your back. It works
just like the Batman cape or something in the Arkham games?
If you jump off a cliff and you press E or whatever it is on the controller, you just flip out your little wings and you can just glide with them.
You just flip out.
And then if you hit spacebar, you launch your parachute, which is the classic Just Cause airborne thing. And so if you chain these together, you sort of pick up downward speed with the wingsuit and then flip open your parachute.
So it works like the cape in Super Mario World?
Yeah.
I'm sure that observation has been made, but that's exactly what that sounds like. It sounds like the cape dive versus the like cape parachute, which you can use to just float for a long fucking time.
Yeah.
Hopefully it makes the same noise. So there's Batman hookshot, there's Spider-Man hookshot, and then there's like Gary's mod.
Spider-Man's a good thing to bring up because this is really, if you guys remember Spider-Man 2, the console game, I mean, this gives you, there's something that is amazing about the combination of flight and parabolas.
When you have the floating and the constant defying and sort of utilizing of gravity as a cycle, right?
Turning gravity into something that you're both constantly fighting against, but also using to your advantage is what makes it amazing. Instead of something you can just bypass, which, is one of the things that famously makes Superman games really hard. But the feeling of having to constantly contend with and take advantage of gravity is an incredible feeling. And I remember the first sort of tutorial story mission I did in the game. I finished it, or I don't know if it was the first or second one. The one that led up to the first, like, actually go to a province or go to a settlement and liberate it. I finished that, and I was about to get my first liberation prompt, and I was on a cliff face, and they do an amazing job in this game visually, just evoking sort of Italian seaside mountainous sort of villages. If you've ever been to the countryside of Italy, it feels very true.
The sort of like stacked up, while also wrapping around a bay sort of feel.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really it's beautiful. And I remember standing on a cliff face and then just looking at my objective marker, and it was just on the other side of this huge body of water, and it was just one of those sort of stacked up to a point little mountainous communities, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to get all the way over there. And I was on a road, so I could just take a car. And it didn't even occur to me at the time that I could take a car. I just started like flying off, and the sensation of this, just like, I've just got to get to that place that's way over there, and I'm doing it through this amazing system of aerial mobility, was just totally incredible. It was like an overwhelming moment. That was probably the moment where I was like, I need a new computer now. I need to see what this looks like when it's supposed to look like.
Imagine this on 3 34-inch curved displays.
The way it's meant to be played.
Right. Also, just the amount that you can chain shit together. Like, I saw a video on Kotaku about someone who created a game of single-player Jenga inside of Just Cause 3, where they used a helicopter and their 6 grappling hooks to stack up a Jenga tower of shipping crates that was like 20 crates tall, each, with like the layers of 3 stacked at 90-degree angles. And then he got in the helicopter and would like
grapple the one and then pull it out.
Yeah, raise or lower it to be level with the crate he wanted to pull out. He would then affix the 2 of his grappling hooks to the crate, and then the other ends of them to the helicopter, and then just back up and pull it out. And then he would reaffix the grappling hooks to the undercarriage of the helicopter and the top of the shipping crate, and lift it up and stack it on top. And then he did just a time lapse where he just fast forwarded through himself doing this, and he just played an entirely functional game of Jenga until it was stacked impossibly high, and then the whole thing collapsed. But it's just like, I'm pretty sure he did that without mods or anything.
Right. It seems like the developers really have been watching the way people actually play Just Cause and slowly optimizing the series towards that. I mean, the fact that you can chain 6 grappling hooks, a wingsuit, and a parachute just like in the main game means that has got to be the case.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they've done such a good job. It's so good. I just love it. I don't really know if these games are like well reviewed or what. I'm just not really sure. But oh my God, if you love just sort of free form exploration and just collision of systems kind of stuff, it's just the best. It's the best. I love it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I played a lot of Just Cause 2. And I feel like I played so much of it, and then I had the same reaction where, like, I don't know if this is well reviewed or like well received in general. Like, I just have no idea how people are viewing this series. I don't remember that
many people talking about Just Cause 3, or maybe I'm just following the wrong.
I saw it blip for a minute. The thing that I saw people talking about the most, at least just on what I follow on Twitter, was the surprising amount of stuff that just exists out in the world to find that has absolutely nothing to do with the game, and that was the thing that made me the most interested in playing it.
Can you think of any examples you saw?
People were just talking about wandering the open world space and then just finding chunks of the map that clearly have no story. Like, I think ancient ruins or something exists out in the middle of the world that someone was talking about.
There might be like a story mission set there 5 hours from now, but like, until
or
that happens,
never. But like, you can't tell. Also, I just looked it up, and it looks like the reviews for this game are reasonably mixed. I mean, it has like a 75 Metacritic, and the user reviews I think are even more mixed, which but I don't know what that means. I didn't actually read any reviews, so that's what Metacritic says. Now everyone knows. Yeah.
I think I got hit for bugginess a little bit, but I mean,
that's so funny because I'm playing it on a computer that's definitely, or was playing on a computer that was not up to the task, and I didn't have a single noticeable crash or bug of any kind. But you know, who knows?
Now you're going to push it to the limits with your new rig.
True. See how it stacks up. Show 'em what you got. Just Cause 3.
I have up to 6 grappling hooks.
You know what? I actually want to tell one specific gameplay story that I had. That was the thing that made me just that just won me over entirely. I just kind of went way off the path, and I encountered an area that clearly is from later. You know, that if I did everything the way the game was kind of feeding it to me, I would not have encountered for a long time, because there were enemies that were clearly just better than the ones I had fought in the tutorial missions. And, you know, it was way more heavily guarded. And it was way more intense, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I just went in there and started blowing shit up. Like, the way that you liberate a province or a settlement is by destroying these specific objects that are sort of symbols of the dictator's control, like PA systems and billboards, and you capture the police station, and, you know, fuel tanks and all these different things. So it just blow tons of shit up. Like, there's no real narrative. Like, people are like, "Hey, you saved us," but like, it's a smoking ruin that you've left behind.
So it's an accurate simulation of real military operations in.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Anyway, so I go in there and I start blowing shit up, and I'm doing pretty well. And then I kind of go too long before I finish it off, because just taking me a while, because I'm not yet super adept with the game. And I get
and like your computer's not really equipped.
I'm not up to the task. Obviously, that was the problem. And I get up to the sort of 5-star like heat level, you know, which means I've attracted just the highest degree of response from the enemy forces. And so there's tanks, and there's like helicopters in the air, and I'm just running around across these sort of these like incredibly high guard towers, and there's 3 helicopters all shooting at me, and it's just a complete nightmare. And I'm like, what the fuck do I do? And then in desperation, I just shoot my grappling hook onto one of the helicopters, and then I'm like, I mean, it feels like I'm a mile high at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I'm grabbing onto the underside of this helicopter, and there's 2 other helicopters swirling around me, and I can just see the entire battlefield that I've been fighting over, which felt enormous when I was in the middle of it, is now just this tiny little thing I can see that I can barely make out any individual parts of. And you can, you know, in this game, you can grapple hook onto any vehicle, airborne or land, and then once you have done that, you can hit E or whatever the button is to like swing into it from whatever you were standing on. And so I swing into this helicopter, and immediately the other 2 helicopters just start blowing me up like instantly. Like, they just instantly know when one of their vehicles has been taken over. And so the second I get into this helicopter, I'm blown out of the helicopter, and I'm flying through the air, and I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I spend the next like probably 5 minutes, or it felt like 5 minutes anyway, maybe it was shorter, grappling from helicopter to helicopter as they kept destroying these helicopters with me in them and sending new helicopters. And I'm basically just getting like batted back and forth through the air, and grappling hook and parachuting. And I just had this entire complex and 100% frantic and like completely panic-ridden battle completely in midair for several minutes without sort of touching anything that was connected to the ground. And then eventually I get so badly damaged that my guy, you know, if you get it damaged badly enough, your guy will just sort of stop responding for several seconds and you can't do anything. And so suddenly I'm just plunging down towards the earth, and I'm like, screens flashing red, you know, there's helicopters blowing up and shooting missiles, and I'm just falling. I fall for what feels like so long. I'm sure it was only several seconds, but it was a really far away, and I'm like, oh, I'm just fucked. I'm just going to hit the ground. And then I crash into the ocean. And I almost had like vertigo or something. Like the feeling of seconds ago, the ground seeming so far away, and I could not make out anything on it, and just sort of bouncing back and forth between these helicopters, and then suddenly I'm deep underwater because I go a long way underwater after this. And I can barely hear anything. I hear the sort of muted sounds of gunfire up ahead, and I'm just surrounded by water, and I'm not getting hit anymore because they I guess can't see me. It was crazy. It was totally fucking crazy. And I spend a long time in the water basically jumping, like finding boats and then grappling onto them and then taking them over, and then those boats getting blown up. And eventually, somehow, I cleared this province without dying. I couldn't believe it. And it just felt like the most amazing just odyssey that I had gone on. It was unbelievable. It was actually hard for me to believe that I got through it. Obviously, you can take a lot of damage because it's a ridiculous action open world game, but nonetheless, it really felt like I had escaped after just a totally incredible series.
You just had like a James Bond opening or something.
Yeah, that's
just
exactly,
like it just,
that is
for years you went away and the villain thought that James Bond
Yes.
is dead, and then you crawled on,
and then he ziplined across 60 boats and liberated that province.
It would be too ridiculous to put into a movie that wasn't intrinsically intended to be comical,
right?
Because it was just too outrageous. But you're right. The one place you could put it would be the opening of a James Bond movie, which are so disconnected from anything that there are basically no stakes. Those things are just outrageous set pieces.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an amazing comparison. But yeah, I couldn't believe it. I just could not fucking believe it. It was crazy. It was totally crazy. So, Just Cause 3, I really, really like it. And I really want to go play it on my new good computer right now.
Man, speaking of things you can't believe, I spent
okay.
I spent more time watching, I guess, the sort of back half of the Awesome Games Done Quick speedrunning marathon this week. And Jake, I think you might have watched some of this, or maybe not.
I watched a tiny bit this year. Okay. I haven't watched very much of this season.
Well, so there were two incredible things that occurred that I just want to briefly mention so that people can go check them out. If you hadn't heard about it, one was a game that I didn't know existed. I guess I did. It was just one of those games that you've maybe heard the name of once, but I have no exposure to it whatsoever. It's called
Just Cause 3. Oh.
Yeah. It's called StepMania. And apparently,
I have heard of that, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I had no real exposure to this, and it's just one of those things where the marathon's going on for hours and hours and hours, and there are many, many games coming up, and so you don't really have any expectations for the next game. And this guy sort of was setting up with 10 other people, and they were like the StepMania crew, and he sets this keyboard up, and he's got his monitor PC game. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is. And what it turns out to be is it's basically I don't think it's open source, but it's kind of like if you design an open source DDR game, I mean, it's just a stripped down, super moddable DDR engine, I guess. But so of course, because it's on PC though, I mean, you can
just use a keyboard, right?
You can just use a keyboard, and it's insane. So this guy starts playing these songs, and they're at 600 beats per minute or something. And then he goes 1.5x
so it just
speed.
Sounds and how is that even music?
Yeah, it's just chaos is what it sounds like. And the arrows for the directions, because it's, in DDR, it's whatever. I forget. It's color coded, or I forget the actual, whatever
it's just the D-pad. It's just up, down, left, right arrows.
Up, down. Okay, so it is just the arrows. So it's still the arrows, but they're just mapped to WASD, basically. Right. Or I guess it's more
hopefully
two pairs
all home row.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, so it's like two pairs of keys side by side, so that you match them with your left and right hand. And
it's like QWOP.
Yeah, it is QWOP. It's crazy. This guy was slamming the keyboard so hard that the camera that was focusing on his hands, like in StarCraft where they show you the actions per minute cam, it was slamming so hard that the camera was just bouncing up and down violently. I couldn't, nobody in the audience could believe what they were seeing, because he wasn't missing a single note, and it was a blur of just inputs that this guy, and he was just describing Yeah, I don't even really, I don't, like mentally like read the, it's almost like music. I just sort of have the patterns internalized, and then it just sort of happens with my hands.
Mm-hmm. The stuff scrolling by like probably refreshes his memory every once in a while. Like it sort of triggers a much more complex, longer memory, once every several seconds.
It was bonkers. It's one of the crazier things I've seen. It's like the experience of watching like that Tetris grand champion for the first time, where you can't believe like what you're seeing, and just his hands are moving.
Tetris the Grandmaster.
Yeah.
That's an amazing. It's not really speedrun, but that's an amazing performance game.
Yeah. It's a performance game.
Where eventually you're just playing invisible Tetris.
Yep. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was every year they do this thing called TASBot, which is they've in past years it was tool assisted speedrun is TAS. That's the the acronym. That basically what speedrunners use that for is rather than actually speedrunning the game, you use a tool that allows you to basically, like if you were playing Prince of Persia or something, do an action, rewind, do the action again.
Right.
And so you're sort of like composing slowly this perfect run of the game. And you do that a lot to find bugs and different exploits and things that you can use.
And
in
you can optimize your playthrough over time.
Yeah.
Bot.
And so there's this group of tassers, and they do all this stuff. But then they made in this little like TASBot out of an ROB, out of a Nintendo ROB who does it live. Because in past years they would just play a video, but it felt kind of weird and lame for a speedrun, like a live speedrun marathon. So they made this little bot that actually just does it, live. And so they do like a block of TASBot games, and a lot of them were insane. But the last one,
wait, does the robot actually press buttons with a hand?
Good question. I doubt it. I doubt it. A lot of this depends on...
Or is it there for show?
Yeah, I think it's there for show, and a lot of it...
we gotta look that up. I'm really curious. But anyway.
But a lot of these exploits, like task exploits that are like task-specific, you have to use like both controllers at the same time. Like they're exploiting things... like in some games, they're actually just... There's a Super Mario World exploit that they showed where you do a bunch of stuff in like World like 1-3, and then you go back to 1-1, and then you arrange like Koopa shells in a specific line, and then eat them with Yoshi and spit them out, and then walk over and collect this specific one-up, and then jump in a particular way.
Oh, you're talking about how you can rewrite memory of the cartridge?
They're just writing code live in the game. It's bonkers.
There are live players who do that as well.
Yeah, they did it live this year, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, they did a weird live race of like writing Super Mario code. But so they did this finale for the task section, which was... a surprise game. Nobody knew what it was going to be. And they loaded up Super Mario All-Stars, and everyone went, oh, it's just Super Mario World. They go to Super Mario World, and they're like, we're going to have to like do some weird stuff, so hold on. And they unplug like the first controller, and they're like doing some stuff on screen, and then they like plug the second controller in, and there's all this sort of back and forth. And finally the screen just like wigs out, and then like a weird like code, like almost like a DOS prompt appears, and it's like this Super Mario backdoor thing.
Oh my god.
Also, like at some point on that like DOS prompt, a weird message from Miyamoto that said something like, what? If we're all guessing that this is somebody's going to find this by 1994. Let's see if that's true.
Whoa. And
then it just starts like there's like a weird like painting thing where it just starts painting like MS Paint painting a dinosaur, and this was like a weird Easter egg that's like hidden in the ROM.
In which game is this?
Oh,
Mario World.
Is this where Mario World Snake is as well, or is that a different thing?
Yeah, it must be. So anyway, so they go through all of this, and then they hit this screen that is just kind of like Mario, and then nothing, just black. And then like a hexadecimal code at the top of the screen.
Yeah.
Or it's probably not hexadecimal. I think it's basically like a 9-digit code. And it's just nothing. And everyone's like, what is this? And then suddenly he starts like executing, like the task just starts executing this crazy thing, and it starts painting a level out. And it turns out there's like a functional like Mario level design, like basically just Mario Maker in Super Mario World. And you like basically with the code, they're just cycling through like the brushes. And so like they had done like a Mario Maker race earlier in the week, and everybody knew like a very specific level out of that because it was sort of infamous. It was this crazy like Mario Maker level where they had like a bunch of the exploding bomb enemies, and there was just a particular room in this level where if you walked in, bombs were just spawning constantly, and it was like impossible to like fathom how you could get out of it. This TASBot just starts making that level in Mario World live, and then they get all done with this, which is just insane. Like just watching in the actual Mario World engine, just this thing just painting this level almost like a printer, just like going across like rapidly painting different brushes and doing like a pass. So it recreates this level, and then they're playing through it, and they have like one of the Mario Maker guys just like run through it, and then the guy goes, "Okay, hold on a second. I'm just gonna do some stuff on my laptop. 1 second," and he's like, "Okay, it should be working." And everyone's like, "What should be working?" He's like, "Okay, everybody in Twitch chat, just start typing like commands, like left and right." And he just hooked it up as like a Twitch plays, and now Twitch is like making a level. And they executed, because there were like 200,000 people in it, they executed so many commands that the memory started to just write over itself. And it just created this bonkers mess of just corrupted like imagery and data and just nonsense. And then they just stopped it. And then the guy who was playing the game just started playing it. And it was crazy. Like there was like a level that you could see that was like in the background of the level that was still like a functional Mario level, but it was like on the bottom half of the screen that was, and then there was like a foreground level, and then everything was just in like corrupted.
I can no longer follow the.
Yeah, I know. Just go watch it because it's
what is it called?
It's completely insane. It's God. I guess just find a just go to the Games Done Quick YouTube channel and look up the last TASBot video. It was on the final day.
I looked at some video of that stuff, and it looked like at least some of the inputs were coming from the robot. Even if it wasn't 100%, but maybe not.
Probably it actually is.
But that sounds outrageous. I can't.
Oh man, you're gonna
I'm really excited about this.
You really need to watch that video.
Yeah,
you would have described it better than I, because I think you know Mario better than I do. But it's so interesting. I mean, I had no idea that any of that existed on the actual ROM.
I wonder how many people did know. I mean, obviously, very few people knew, but I wonder how long that information has been common knowledge. Like,
they hide a lot of stuff. These guys, when they discover stuff, they hide it. And then
it
show
sounds
it
like they do a lot of
Right. That's. I mean,
because there were Mario runners there who were just like, what? Like they had a Super Mario 3 TASBot hack, and they were just running around, and you could just spawn a Koopa shell that would just sort of orbit Mario in an elliptical pattern, and you could just jump off of the shell and just do all these like insane things. Like, it's so crazy.
It's part of why AGDQ is great. I mean, like it seems like as this stuff becomes more and more of an element in the scene, it becomes like I just don't remember this stuff being as big of a deal in like Games Done Quick a few years back, but now
apparently 2 years ago, I think you alluded to this, Jake, they create, I don't know if it was the same people, maybe they coded live on top of Super Mario World Pong and Snake.
Oh yeah, that's what that was. Yes.
Yeah.
So this has been going at least a few years.
Yeah, people doing Mario World memory injections are one of my favorite weird ass things. Yeah.
Yeah. This was a pretty outrageous example.
Someone on Twitter yesterday linked me, a Twitter user who goes by Satsuki, linked me a YouTube video that's like half an hour long, and it's about a guy explaining in Super Mario 64, I guess there's this sort of type of run in Super Mario 64 where you try to use as few A presses as possible. And it's actually possible to use a half of an A press. Like, not all A presses are an entire press, because a press consists of depressing the button, holding it down, and then releasing it. But if you have it already held down because you pressed it earlier in the game, when you start the level, it's already down because you already used the first half of it to do something in a prior level. That's only half it. Like, each of those parts, the pressing down and the releasing, or the holding and releasing, counts as only a half A press in this community. And the guy was explaining like what this means and what the utility of that is. But then he also, like, in the process of explaining this, also went into this crazy shit about how it's possible to like get out of the level bounds by building up impossible momentum and then going into parallel universes of the level where you're at a different place than the game thinks you are, and how you can exploit enemy AI routines to like control them from a different place
man.
and make them climb infinitely into the air. And he started off and it was like, people always get confused in my runs when I talk about half an A press, so I'm going to explain what half an A press is. And, 3 minutes in, he's explained what half of an A press is, and then there's 27 more minutes, so I'm like, oh, okay, well, the rest of it's going to be just a run using that.
Nope.
Yeah.
It was the craziest shit.
Mario 64
it was unbelievable.
is
I'm not going to
just-
explain it all because I can't.
Yeah.
But it was weird.
Yeah, that game is so... Somebody did two people did a co-op Mario 64 run where I guess you can play as Luigi in a hacked version of that game or something.
Good.
But it's really weird because the game doesn't account for the fact that there's a second player, so you're playing on the same screen and the camera doesn't adjust.
Oh, if the camera's not going to give a fuck about Luigi,
the camera does not give a fuck about Luigi until the other player holds down a button, I think like the Z button, and then it snaps to Luigi. And so there are these crazy things where they're trading the camera back and forth and sort of agreeing like, okay, Luigi's going to die in this particular part, and then, Mario's going to go complete this thing. Yeah, just like that game is incredibly, but like they've broken it to like the nth degree. It's insane. Yeah, crazy stuff this year. 2-player, 1-controller Super Metroid run. Like they completed the game in I think 40 minutes, and one guy was controlling all the movement and the other guy was controlling the button presses, and it looked like one person playing when you were just watching the screen. I watched
an entire Spelunky run that was no gold pacifist.
Yeah.
So did not collect a single piece of gold the entire run and did not kill a single enemy the entire run.
Yep.
Including the final boss, and the way that he defeated the final boss is hilarious. I will not spoil it.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
Spelunky no gold pacifist. Look that up if you are interested in crazy Spelunky runs.
Yeah, there was a Diablo run as well, and I was really curious to see what the hell they were going to do because it's procedural levels.
Yeah.
And I was, also similarly destroyed because they just completed that game doing things that I would have never thought of. Like, for instance, because they're just trying to speedrun the game, the guy runs up and he just immediately loses almost all of his health. And he's like, oh, that was intentional because this game doesn't check for stuns when you're below a certain threshold of your health. So I can just run past all the enemies now. Boop, and he just runs past like the first, 6 hours of the game with no health because that's just the way that you do it. Yeah. Like, oh God, it's really weird.
Well,
anyway,
awesome games done quick. Yeah, look it up. You guys want to take a break?
Sure.
Yeah. Cool. Video games. This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by Zombies Run Virtual Race. This is an app that helps you train up running and keep motivation going by tying your running to a sort of virtual audio story, zombie apocalypse story that continues as you run more and more. One of our readers, Maris, posted in the forum, there are a lot of apps that purport to motivate you, including zombies, but Zombies Run by Six to Start is the nice one. The missions are all unique and fully voiced, written by an actual writer, so they very quickly evolve from, oh no, there are zombies, to how exactly do we continue grinding on, and a little bit of how did this happen in the first place. There's a mission early on where things go badly by the end, and the next mission is just the radio operator holding a vigil, hoping you can hear him. Maris goes on to talk about sort of how the thing keeps you motivated and how effective the radio drama element is. He says that it really does a great job of putting you in the world and making you want to work through the whole thing. If you go to zombiesvirtualrace.com and use the coupon code IDLETHUMBS, all lowercase, you will get $5 off your entry. For $55, you can get a package that includes the entire thing and a t-shirt. It is a lot cheaper than a gym membership. So if you go to zombiesvirtualrace.com and use the coupon code IDLETHUMBS, all lowercase, you will get $5 off your entry. Nice. Thanks, Zombies Run.
Don't mention it.
Video game. This episode of Idle Thumbs is also brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest and most user-friendly way to build a beautiful and very functional website, portfolio, blog, or online store. Squarespace sites work very well on desktop, mobile, tablet, any internet browsing device that your readers could possibly have. It is really easy to use. You can get started without putting in a credit card or anything. The whole experience is just really nice the whole way through. And if you go to squarespace.com and use the promo code THUMBS, you will get 10% off your order. As often, we have a reader who wrote in with a website he used Squarespace to build using our code. He is Zach Danz, and his website is zachdanz.com. That's ZACHDANZ.com. It is a portfolio site that he put together. He says he intends it to help get an internship in the games industry this summer. And it has the things that he has made himself in a nice, easy, browsable form. I'm looking at it on my phone right now, and everything just shows up nicely and is there, and it is formatted well and cleanly as you'd expect, and has all the links to where you can find them on the internet. Squarespace.com, and use the promo code THUMBS for 10% off. Thanks, Squarespace.
Video games.
No, what you mean is, hey! Woo!
Well, do you guys want to do some reader mail?
I do.
Yep.
All right. Daniel Williams writes, missing mechanic in Bushido Blade. Hello, Dan from Boston here. Heard your episode that included talk about Bushido Blade, and I thought I'd mention something about it. Steve touched on how you can play honorably, but what wasn't mentioned is that the game in story mode is actually based on how you play. If you one-shot people from behind, it's considered dishonorable, and you get the shitty story path and fight dishonorable people, like that asshole with the pistol. As you play through by facing your opponent and attacking defensively, you get the better and longer story and fight more honorable characters. As far as I know, this was never explained other than through blogs when people noticed that the game had different story but couldn't figure out why until way later. Sort of like World Tendency in Demon's Souls, now that I think about it. Thanks for always spurring great discussion. Keep it up.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'll have to play that story mode.
I know. Here's another Bushido Blade email, actually. Bonus Wave Pilot writes, hey, Thumbs, a couple of things about Bushido Blade, which you should definitely play if you can find a viable way to do so. First up, I don't think Nick mentioned that as a choice of fighters and weapons, within combat, there are different stances you can assume, which visibly change the way you're standing and affect which attacks you may perform. My most lasting memory of the game is that I found it endlessly hilarious to subvert the honorable warrior spirit theme by immediately sprinting away across the map in the brief post-battle moment before the round is ended. Because the maps are so large, it really looks like you're making a break for it after murdering someone in the forest. Love the show. Keep it up, guys.
That's pretty good.
Congrats, Nick. Bonus Wave Pilot. That's really funny. People, we got a bunch of Bushido Blade email. People, I think, are excited to see that game talked about, because it does seem like it was really sort of seminal in a way, but hasn't had the follow-up you'd expect from that.
Or even really, like, as much of a cult hit as it is, I still don't see it talked about as much as I would expect.
Yeah. Let's see. Nathan Jester writes, hey guys, so recently I've been thinking about what makes games stale. I've been getting back into Pokemon, and though little has changed mechanically in the last 2 decades, catching and raising the little monsters remains compelling as ever. Similarly, most first-person shooters seem very similar, bearing the same mechanics in different settings, but I'm kind of done with it. I've decided it may just be subjective. What do you think make games and genres feel stale in a bad way? Nathan Jester.
I guess just, I don't know. It's interesting, the Pokemon reference, though, because, I mean, I was thinking, well, you mentioned Assassin's Creed earlier, and I feel like one of the things that people realize, and that I think Ubisoft just realized, is that the every year release cycle is a bit much for that kind of game. It feels like it's not enough to gestate and sort of
there's so much of the same in each one. Just content-wise, there's a huge amount of it.
Right, and then Pokemon, though, is the same thing, so I wonder, the distinction there, I don't know.
I wonder if it has to do with sort of the repetition either... and obviously this is going to be subjective for any given person, clearly, but I wonder if the difference between something feeling stale and something being exciting to go back to all the time is whether the repetition kind of exposes the blandness of the core of the thing, or whether it just highlights that it's a really enjoyable, repeatable mechanic, right? Like Tetris is this, every game of Tetris has the same core loop in it, but that core loop is such a satisfying thing that you can kind of just that game's never going to get stale per se. And even that form of game of dropping block stuff doesn't really get stale. You can play an uninspired one, but genre doesn't really ever feel like it's worn out its welcome intrinsically. Whereas I think with this sort of a particular kind of open world game I was describing, I think the thing that was novel about that when they were novel was, wow, it's crazy that you have this huge open world and you can do all this stuff in it, and it's just, you can go anywhere in it and do all this.
It sort of means to steer you around the content in those games a little more.
Right, but the actual stuff you're doing itself, like once it's no longer novel that you can do all that stuff in a huge world, it's like not that interesting to just go to an arbitrary point on a map.
I can give you a retro example, which is like the early, or even just basically any Final Fantasy game. When I was a kid, I thought those things were the most amazing experiences ever. When you try and replay those, it's just, awful, boring, just grinding out with a terrible combat system. No, it's just really boring. It's just a lot of just fluff propping up like the few things that you remember fondly. And
except for the people for whom the things that you're describing as grinding and fluff is like their zen-like place that they go to relax.
Sure, which is fine.
Which is
that's obviously the subjective dividing line.
Exactly. But I think it is sort of a re-examination of a particular mechanic that maybe actually wasn't that much fun, but that was something that you kind of just took as a thing. I have to do this, and it hasn't really been done a lot at this point, but then
I mean, the equivalent
20 years on, it's just like, well, all right,
The equivalent of that for me, I think, sort of going back to the thing I was playing at the age when whatever, when when I was growing up, would have been, I suppose, PC adventure games, where going back and playing those, which I don't do that frequently, but like every once in a while, I'll go back and play through an old LucasArts adventure game, less frequently one from another studio, because I think the LucasArts one have held up the best, but still, there's a lot of just kind of boring puzzle stuff in there. There are some puzzles that are inspired and are still really clever and great, feel good when you sort of re-solve them or remember them. But there's a lot of that stuff that does, feel like how you're describing, where it's just, this really only exists to chain together like the real reason I'm playing this game.
It's there to be in your way and give you something to do to get to the real thing.
Yeah. And I think a lot of first-person shooters, I think one of the reasons that genre can feel stale is when it's just grinding through enemies that are individually not very interesting. And like one of the, so I was thinking about this actually. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it just seems like the distinction between games that are like a single mode of play versus games that have components, and like any particular component of that game may or may not be something that's just stale or outdated or
well, you're increasing the chance that one of them will become a weak link over time. Like,
that's kind of what I'm thinking. Is it feels like Civilization is just always Civilization. It doesn't switch into some story mode in the middle of the game. Whereas, like with Final Fantasy, there are components to that game that you may enjoy.
You're not
more
grinding
than others.
Through the Aztecs to get to the science ending. That's the game. That is what you're doing.
And it seems like those components were always sort of propping up the playtime of the experience. Which is still done.
I guess you can play Civ enough to get some of that. But I mean, but like if you don't enjoy the core thing, I guess then what are you doing?
Yeah,
but
anyway, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say, when I was playing Just Cause, it is totally possible to play the combat parts of Just Cause in a really conservative and like fairly boring way, where you just take a sort of decently powerful mid-range rifle and just shoot guys one after another until you've destroyed all the stuff you need to destroy, while cleaning out guys so that you don't die while doing it. And if you just do that, it's actually an incredibly boring game, or at least the combat parts are. And I was thinking about that because I think I was thinking, man, why? What is the point of this that I'm doing right now? And then it made me think about playing a first-person shooter where that's really the only part of the game, because that I don't know if that's as common now, because it doesn't seem like first-person shooters are as ubiquitous a genre as they were for a while there. But definitely there was an era in the recent past when there were just tons of first-person shooters that just individually didn't have very much going for them. And it is just a sort of mindless chewing through enemies, like bullet fatigue thing. And I realized the thing that makes Just Cause interesting, or potentially interesting if it clicks with you, is not like the experience of shooting these guys. It's that those guys are just like variables that are fed into this huge system that encompasses shooting, but also grappling and environmental destructibility and gliding and vehicles and chained explosions and all of these other things. And like, if you actually want to get what the game has out of it, you have to actually engage with all those systems. But like, they are there to engage with. And I think the sort of combat fatigue comes in games where you either are not properly encouraged to engage with all the systems, or where there just isn't enough there to do anything with.
Yeah.
It's like, just what you said, a sort of less outrageous example of that to me was BioShock. When I was playing BioShock 1, 2, and Infinite, the combat in those games were not fun for me at first, because I kept falling into the default mode of just use like the nicest gun that I have. But once I forced myself to start like putting traps down, chaining plasmids together, like, you know, using the entire scope of the arena plus all of the abilities that I had, it became a lot more fun. It seems like Just Cause, by being completely fucking outrageous, maybe does a better job of encouraging you to do that than BioShock. Like, I feel like I hear a lot of people fall into that trap in BioShock.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely, in a game like BioShock, you have to be a little bit more proactive, because you are basically just a guy who walks around. And, you know, and then... all of
the presentation of BioShock, for as insane as it is trying to tell you, this is a real place, you're a real person, this is a real scenario. But what you have to do to have fun is leap all over the place and fire lightning out of your hands and set oil drums on fire.
Right. I had the same experience. I remember halfway through BioShock, suddenly I'm like, oh man, I have all this stuff at my disposal. The first time I played it back in 2010. And my second half of that game was way more enjoyable gameplay-wise. I mean, the whole thing was enjoyable for other reasons. But even in a more stripped-down shooter, I think or any game, I think this is valuable, because you think back to the original Doom, and I think, you know, the legacy of that game development-wise, a lot of times got boiled down to just like gore and churning through enemies and firing a gun nonstop for hours and hours and hours. But when you go back and play that game, it's about these very different enemy types with different kinds of projectiles that you're constantly sort of dodging and trying to evade. And there's this like very simple but present tactical element. You are not a damage sponge who's just pumping bullets into guys forever. And I think that remembering that really important quality of that game, you could extend that out to any mechanic, and it's like, don't just settle for the dumbest version of your mechanic, even in a game that is kind of like dumb, so to speak. Like, I don't mean that in a pejorative way. Like, Doom is intentionally a very stripped down experience, but it like elevates itself by using those very simple mechanics in a variety of interesting ways. And I think that, you know, that the thing that can lead to fatigue is when a genre gets boiled down so much to like such a specific set of elements that everyone's just kind of doing the same thing. And there's, you know, I don't know. But yeah, it's funny that we got this email, because I was thinking about that as I was playing Just Cause 3 and trying to figure out why I was why I was enjoying a game where you basically kill guys forever. And then I realized, well, that's really just one tool in this like amazing toolbox. Patrick Ripole writes, "Hey Thumbs, why do some people call the Super Nintendo the SNES as opposed to the SNES or Super NES? Is this a regional thing? I feel I've only heard it in the last few years or so. When did this start?" Patrick Ripole.
England presents calling it the SNES.
Oh, that's true. They say SNES.
They say SNES a lot.
I think there are people in this country who do say SNES, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it is totally a regional thing. I think you could do one of those maps that shows if people call it a soda, a Papa, or a Coke.
I was just thinking of that.
You could have a Super Nintendo, an SNES, an SNES. No one calls it that. Or a Super NES or whatever the hell.
I remember
and then one really boring kid who calls it the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
I don't remember what the circumstances were the first time I heard someone say SNES, but I do remember my emotional reaction to it, which was what I have to the way I felt the first time I heard someone say SNES. I was the same way I imagine that many listeners of this podcast must feel when Jake or I say GIF. Yeah. People seem to have like a physical reaction to that.
Yeah.
And I remember having that when I heard Snes, because it was so alien. It felt like someone was suddenly like warping into this dimension from another place. It was
Snes. What was that?
Yeah,
It was a teddy bear.
Yeah, that bear warped in.
I mean, it was
so you
Snes.
pulled the plastic rubber when it's Snes.
It was
Jif, Snes.
It was actually much weirder than someone warping in and just saying Snes, because I'd been having an entire conversation with this person about video games, and suddenly, Super Mario World on the Snes, and it was like that halfway through that sentence is when they just like pod person shifted into the
Super Mario World on the SNES.
Mario. When I moved from New York to California,
Mario
as a kid,
brother.
I said Mario, and I got made fun of.
Yeah, we've
I've said that
talked about your
before.
Mario
Yeah.
problems.
Oh, yeah, SNES, man. That was not one I grew up with.
I think I might have been a SNES kid, actually.
Really?
I call it that, yeah.
Wow. Huh. I'd never hear you say SNES.
I corrected myself. It's like
You lost your original
I
accent.
lost my
like
original
people
accent.
do.
I call it a Super Nintendo
Yeah.
or an SNES or a SNES.
But nobody's there.
But as SNES, GIF.
Man, so Jake, you and I still haven't talked about Bridge. We don't have time to on this podcast anymore. But I do want to talk about playing Bridge maybe next week on this podcast, because I do think it's really
Next
interesting
week, Bridge Blast.
from a game standpoint, game design standpoint. But very briefly on this topic, George Moyer writes in to clarify something that I mentioned, I guess, last week when I talked about Bridge ethics. So he writes, "Hi Thumbs, love the show.
Bridgegate.
Yeah. In Bridge, partners can play together for years and become adept at communicating information about the strength of their hands. Saying, I'll pass, may tell your partner, my hand's not good enough to take this myself, but it's not a total loser, and maybe together we can take enough tricks to win the round." That would happen often in euchre. Do you guys know how to pronounce that? Euchre? Euchre? Okay.
Yeah.
This would happen often in euchre, which is a dirtier, faster trick-taking played by all Michiganders.
Yes.
Usually
Yes.
alcohol is involved. In euchre, if someone touches their ring finger to signal they're strong in diamonds, it's annoying. In Bridge, I could see it starting an actual fight. Cheers, George, Long Beach.
Man, everybody played euchre when I was growing up.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was a variant of Bridge, I guess, or some kind
It might
of-
just be another
some-
similar
some-
game.
some-
There are
yeah.
a bunch of trick-taking games that may all share
Yeah.
a history with like whist or something. I don't know. I've been reading
yeah.
about Bridge history recently. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A bunch of people, both on the forums and on Twitter and email, have clarified the purpose of that Bridge ethics thing. And now that they've all said so, I feel like an idiot for not intuiting that that's the reason. Like the most important thing in Bridge betting, and I guess we'll talk about this later, is to get you and your partner who cannot verbally communicate with each other about anything specific to try and intuit what each other's hands maybe kind of are. So obviously, like anything that could be construed as extraneous information in that way would be that would be bad. So that makes a lot of sense. Anyway,
Is that a podcast?
I guess that is a podcast.
This
All
is
right.
what podcasts are, for those who are wondering.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by Zombies Run Virtual Race, an audio adventure that turns your training and racing into a post-apocalyptic adventure story in which you are the hero. Zombies Run Virtual Race is fun and gets you motivated to keep running and get yourself trained up. Visit zombiesvirtualrace.com and use the coupon code IDLETHUMBS, all caps, to get $5 off.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, please consider rating us on iTunes or telling a friend or telling a forum that you participate on. Who knows? Anyway, you could spread the word, would be awesome. We appreciate it enormously. You can send us email to questions@idlethumbs.net. And, we've been plugging our new show, Idle Weekend, for the last few weeks, and I'm going to do it again because it's really good. It's really, really good. You can find it at idleweekend.net. It features Rob Zachney and Danielle Riendo, formerly of this podcast, and Rob Zachney currently in and for a long time of 3 Moves Ahead, also on our network. And Idle Weekend is just a great show. I saw someone mention on Twitter or the forums how surprised they were and pleased that Idle Weekend isn't just Idle Thumbs, but on the East Coast. And they're totally right. And I am also shocked by how quickly that show has developed its own identity. Rob and Danielle have a really amazing rapport where they often come from different perspectives on an issue, but have a really great way of discussing it and get into just really fascinating sort of angles about gaming topics that I just don't hear on gaming podcasts generally. It's just awesome. It's so good. idleweekend.net. So, yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Talk to you next week.
Bye.
What are you doing?
Not feeling
suddenly?
too good.
Oh no, is it the spicy food?
Yeah.
Oh,
I've got about 10 minutes in me, Chris.
all right.
Let's get through this podcast.
You have a spicy breakfast?
Oh, no. Spicy meal last night. It was a mistake.